What up, YouTube? Are you sick of your voice being silenced? Are you sick of big business working with big tech and working with big government to take away your civil liberties, to take away your freedoms, to conspire with a corrupt communist deep state organization trying to take away your civil liberties?
The mainstream media cuts President Trump very little slack and goes out of their way to cover up his many accomplishments since he's been in office. But it goes back much further than that. For decades, Donald Trump has been quietly helping Americans from all backgrounds, without any praise or credit from the media. As it turns out, the businessman turned president has a long history of random acts of kindness. For example, the president is a champion of women's rights, and going all the way back to 1980, Trump hired Barbara Rez to be the head of construction for his organization. She was just one of many women Trump promoted into prominent positions in construction at a time when the industry was dominated by men, with Trump even saying that a good woman is better than 10 good men. As a result, Barbara says she may have been the first woman in U.S. history to build a skyscraper.
Do you know how much more money you'd have in your bank account today if Joe Biden wasn't president?
As they say in my business, I'm gonna give you the whole load today.
Do you know how much more money you would have in your 401k if Joe Biden wasn't president?
I don't doubt that President Trump has a high IQ, that he's bright, that he's well educated.
How did Joe Biden become president? Well, because the mainstream media and the deep state colluded together with big business to silence your voice, to silence our voice, to silence the conservative voice, and they're trying to do it again as we ramp up towards the 2024 election.
Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, and we've got the latest victim of one of the fundamental laws of the universe. Get woke, go broke, and boy, did they go broke.
Come on, man.
At midnight of January 25th, AT&T's DirecTV cut the signal for the conservative cable news network NewsMax, immediately shutting the network off from more than 13 million customers of the satellite service. The stated reason given for the cancellation was an impasse between DirecTV and NewsMax regarding licensing fees that DirecTV would pay NewsMax for airing their program. Programming distributors like DirecTV pay licensing fees to the various channels that they feature. And according to DirecTV, NewsMax, they were asking too much money, and they decided that they didn't want to pay those fees. The problem with that excuse is that it's being reported that DirecTV does continue to pay the fees to a number of left-wing liberal news networks that are getting far lower ratings than NewsMax. And according to NewsMax, these leftist news networks have even higher fees. So a lot of people are smelling a rat here.
A few years later, in 1988, a Jewish family were desperate to find help for their critically ill son, who was just 3 years old and needed a flight from Los Angeles to New York for emergency treatment. But all the commercial airlines refused to fly their son because he needed to travel with several large pieces of medical equipment. Running out of hope, the family reached out to Donald Trump, who they said didn't even hesitate and agreed to have his private jet fly the family and their sick son to New York for treatment. The boy's father said, quote, "Donald Trump is a miracle, just a miracle." In 1991, witnesses say that while Trump was riding in his limo, he spotted a man being brutally attacked by a mugger with a baseball bat. Trump ordered the limo to pull over and jumped out of the car, shouting at the man to drop the bat, who, according to witnesses, then fled the scene.
If you haven't noticed, the deep state trying to force Ron DeSantis down your throat, that's the end game. And why is that? Because they know that DeSantis will divide you and kind of can pull a little bit away from President Trump. But that's only because people are being brainwashed. So they're now trying to eliminate any news network from the face of the earth who speaks up and is pro-Trump. First, it was OAN Network. Then they just took out Project Veritas. Then they just took out NewsMax.
Even before services were cut, House Republicans weren't buying the excuse and urged DirecTV to reconsider dropping the conservative cable network. A letter was sent to DirecTV and its owner, AT&T, co-signed by 40 Republican lawmakers, threatening hearings if the satellite company went ahead with the cancellation. Well, as of the 25th of January, they did just that, which made NewsMax actually the second conservative channel DirecTV deplatformed. In January of last year, they announced in a very controversial move that they were dropping One America News Network from their channel offerings. So many are seeing NewsMax as but the latest in what appears to be a deliberate, targeted purge of conservative channels.
Keep in mind, this next reporter that you're hearing speaking is the OAN network. Now you can see why all of a sudden DirecTV and AT&T no longer are supporting this network. Where do you think that those decisions came from? Who is powerful enough to go to a provider like DirecTV or AT&T and tell them that they need to stop carrying a news network with 13 million viewers?
In 2008, singer and actress Jennifer Hudson's mother, brother, and nephew were all murdered at their home in Chicago. In another unexpected gesture of kindness, Trump reached out to the grief-stricken Hudson and offered to house her and her relatives at Trump Tower in Chicago for free. At the time, People magazine praised Trump for his, quote, heart of gold, with Trump saying he just wanted to help protect her and her family. A few years later, in 2013, bus driver Darnell Barton stopped to help a woman who he thought looked like she was about ready to jump off a bridge. Donald Trump heard about the story and sent Barton a $10,000 check for his good deed, saying, quote, your quick thinking resulted in a life being saved, and for that, you should be rewarded. The next year, in 2014, U.S. Marine Corps Sergeant Andrew Timorisi was arrested in Mexico and held for 7 months after he accidentally brought firearms across the border. Trump followed the case, and when Andrew was finally released and returned to the United States, Trump reached out and sent him a check for $25,000, thanking him for his service and bravery. But that's not the first or last time Donald Trump stood up to help America's veterans. In 2015, then presidential hopeful Trump stepped in to help Army veteran Todd Landon, who was critically wounded in an IED attack in Iraq back in 2006. Trump was holding a rally in Iowa and came down off the stage to speak with Landon, who told him about all the problems he was having getting proper care with the VA, which he said was rife with problems. Trump vowed to help Landon out, intervened with the VA on his behalf, and the very next day, Landon said the VA contacted him and shortly after approved compensation payments for his injuries.
A deliberate, targeted purge of conservative channels. Well, that didn't sit well with conservatives. Needless to say, a huge boycott of both DirecTV and the parent company AT&T was launched, and according to NewsMax, ironically, since the cancellation, AT&T has fallen in terms of stock price by 7%, wiping out $10 billion in their market value. Now, this is during a time when the S&P actually rose by about a percentage point between January 25th and February 10th, and the Dow Jones declined by just around 1.8% during that same time period. So that was a significant downturn for AT&T. And NewsMax is obviously claiming victory here, as is one of their biggest fans. President Trump noticed the stock devaluation. He took to Truth Social and wrote, quote, AT&T must reinstate NewsMax immediately and OAN while they're at it, because it's only going to get worse for AT&T as people flock to leave both their stock and their platform. Welcome to the era of Trump. So what's he talking about there? What is this Trump era in terms of AT&T losing so much market value? Well, it's the same era that's absolutely crushing Disney. You may have heard Disney has lost upwards of $120 billion as a direct result of their pushing woke politics over the course of the last couple of years. Their stock value was cut in half, and this new era explains precisely why, and it's one that promises to change the nation like never before. And you know who's one of the biggest players in this dawning patriot era, don't you?
Trump took it a step further after he was elected president, and reversing nearly a decade of neglect from Obama, Trump forgave the student debts of nearly 50,000 permanently disabled veterans. In 2017, President Trump heard that the family of Army Corporal Dylan Baldridge was struggling after their son was killed in Afghanistan. Vowing his support for the family, President Trump personally sent them a check for $25,000 and instructed his staff to create an online fundraising page to help the family out. These are the stories the mainstream media doesn't want you to know about. And they're just a few of the many examples over the years of when President Trump took a stand and helped people who, in many cases, had nowhere else to turn. No one expected Trump to help. It's not mentioned in any of his campaign promotions, and he never makes any big speeches about it. He just did the right thing because no one else would, and it needed to be done.
The new Trump era is one defined by what scholars call consumer politics. Now, consumer politics involves customers intentionally buying from companies that promote and support their political and cultural values, all the while refusing to purchase from those companies that actively oppose and offend those political and cultural values. And so consumer politics involves two dynamics: boycotts and boycotts. Boycotts are obviously the refusal to purchase from companies that offend our values, but boycotts are intentional purchases from companies that support and defend our political and cultural values. Now, I bring up consumer politics here precisely because consumer politics are at the heart of cancel culture. We've all seen this with our own eyes, how corporations so quickly and easily buckle under the pressure from far-left activists. Remember, we went through precisely this ourselves with the premiere of our movie, The Return of the American Patriot. We had two cowardly venues cancel on us out of pressure from a bunch of woke leftist agitators. The fuel that drives cancel culture is consumer politics, particularly the boycott side, an extreme boycott side of things. But the boycott side of things is initiating a whole new economy known as the parallel economy. An economy built on consumers who no longer want anything to do with woke cancel culture. So scholars are in wide agreement that the parallel economy that's rising comes straight out of cancel culture, particularly in the banning of President Trump from Twitter and Facebook back in 2021, along with the banning of Parler from AWS and the Apple App Store and Google Play Store.
So if you are an AT&T or a DirecTV customer, you most likely should be changing your service. You should be giving them the big middle finger, and you should be trying to just cancel DirecTV. You don't need cable. What's on cable? A bunch of woke media outlets and a bunch of woke flicks. I mean, literally, what do you watch? Do you guys really want to rot your brain with that garbage? Now that we know that Hollywood is owned by the Democratic National Party, and if you're not down with the woke in Hollywood, you pretty much get the axe and you never get another role. Have you seen what they're doing with Newsflix? Have you seen what they've been doing with Netflix? Brainwashing your children? Keep that garbage away from your children. Get rid of DirecTV, get rid of AT&T,